Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
We're live already or streaming, so Seth
Yep.
could get a link up. So just heads up.
Yep.
Is that me? Oh, that's my fault. I actually had YouTube open on my computer, and there's a little bit of a delay. So I had it open in another window, and it was coming back to me.
Nice.
How are you guys? Can you hear me, Will?
I can hear you. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
We are streaming on YouTube already, so just a heads up there.
Doing juke like Joe Biden hidden in his basement.
You talking about me?
Yeah, Joe Biden hidden in his basement. That's looked like what you're doing.
Yeah, I got all sorts of weird stuff going on, like kid toys behind me and stuff too. So where we throw all the stuff that doesn't fit upstairs. And I can hear dogs stampeding around upstairs right now as I speak.
That toy thing's only going to get worse.
I believe
Believe
that.
me, I've been through that.
Heard any ice reports, Shane?
I have not.
I know there's been some guys over west of Sioux Falls been going on these little sloughs, but it's pretty thin.
Yeah, I'd be a little scared right now.
About 2.5 inches.
Riley tell you about my hunt last week?
He kind of mentioned a little bit, but he never really went into any detail.
I had a monster. I couldn't stop shaking.
Amateurs.
You'd think after 40 years of deer hunting, I wouldn't I'd be able to keep my body from shaking.
I haven't had a deer come by me big enough to make me shake yet this year.
I sent you that email. I saw a pretty good one just east of your house there that one morning.
We'd seen him a couple times. We have him on camera. He's an all right deer. Hopefully this cold weather will make some ice so that I can go out there and start banging some perch.
I got the muzzleloader tag.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Well, then you can go back out and start shaking on that other monster again.
That's where I'm headed on Saturday morning.
They said there was my roommate from college. His neighbor shot a 200-inch whitetail out there by Han County.
Someone said they saw that picture. I haven't seen it.
I'll send it to you tomorrow. I probably wouldn't have shot him. He didn't have an eye guard on one side.
Yeah, I would have passed too. I probably would have shot his eye guard off the way I was shaking Saturday night. Do you know what part of Han County that was shot?
I'm guessing that there's I'm guessing out there to the south and west, but I don't know for sure.
I hunt about 4 or 5 miles from the Beetle County line. So I'm way on the east side of Han County.
Yeah, we used to hunt over by Collins Slough over in that country. A lot of CRP and big sloughs over there.
A lot of the CRP's gone.
That could be. I don't know. I haven't been out there in eons.
Hey, guys.
That's late. All right. Looks like everybody is here now. Deb, do you want to take a roll call?
Slade,
Here.
Cody,
Here.
Corey,
Present.
Mark,
Here.
Kyle,
Thank you. All right, business item tonight is to discuss the eligibility and co-curricular activities policy. So,
All right, motion to approve the agenda first.
oh, sorry, did I skip? Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Motion by Corey,
I'll second that.
second by Cody. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Now, sorry, business to discuss the policy of eligibility and co-curricular activities. So whatever, we've had conversations, or there have been conversations, and then whatever, I've been in a meeting, so I've been very hard to get a hold of. But anyway, so when I had talked to Kevin the other night, so the other night when I talked to Kevin, since there was a pressure for people to be put eligible, what I had asked Kevin is if it was possible if we were able to just leave our original date for this week and just redo grades, and then that makes basically our whole policy our issue go away, and then we don't have to change the policy. And then when I talked to Kevin, and I told him, I said, I'm not necessarily in favor of necessarily changing the policy. That's not what it is. But I do think as I've had a few more conversations today, and tonight's meeting was just, we picked a date tonight. We got, I don't know, I'm assuming everybody got the email, or did anybody forward you that email? If not, I'm sorry.
But what email? I guess I've gotten emails today and read them, but
Okay. I just got one. I don't know. It said, and to be honest, I can email it. Well, I don't know. Am I able to say that? I don't know.
Is it the one that you received from a teacher?
No, a teacher's wife.
Oh, okay.
Did you get that one?
No, I did not. I received a copy of one that went to the board from one of our
Yep,
teachers.
I got that one. Did you get the other one, Slade?
no, that was the only one I got.
Okay, let me see if I can forward it.
I think, Slade, you got to get your email on the website because some people said your email's not on there.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. Unfortunately, that's not up to me
Maybe
to
you
put
know,
on.
you know what you're doing.
Okay, you should be getting it now. That doesn't help. But anyway, after reading the emails, like with policy change and stuff like that, like I don't think and maybe I don't know, whatever, when Kevin and I talked, my issue on this whole thing isn't necessarily the policy. Well, I do think that maybe we, at least for this year, probably do need to adjust it for the fact of, I do feel like we show leniency to the teachers for like, if we have kids go out of school, we give them a day to practice and or to prepare. And I think that's great. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, I think if we're willing to give the leniency to the teachers, I do think we probably need to give some leniency to the students. Not that I'm saying that academics aren't important, but it is hard on them to go from in class online, all in a matter of a week. And so I don't know where that leaves with changing the policy eventually, if anybody's in favor of something like that. That is more so what I think, like, tonight, whether it gets changed, at least needed to be discussed, I think. And that was my opinion. So maybe that will be a short meeting. I don't know. That's just kind of my opinion on the whole thing. I don't know.
Yeah, my thoughts on the whole. Maybe we need to back up, especially for people that don't know kind of what maybe prompted this meeting and stuff. In my opinion, it seems like there's a lot of kids that have been had poor grades here, and I think they were out of sports here for 2 weeks, and I think that there was just a lot of different things going on with no school, and then we didn't. You see in the national news about kids struggling as a whole if they're online. And so I think that there's just a lot of people saying that, is this the right policy? And would it be better to look at something different that gives a little more give in this season? And so I think that's probably why we're here where we are. So I guess for me, I think that there's a lot of people I talk to and some teachers and so forth. And so I don't know. I think it's unusual season. Maybe it's 2 weeks when you're failing. Seems to be a long time for a lot of people. And so I thought, maybe we should talk about that if we could do something. So that was my thoughts on the whole thing.
So I'm gonna go back here a little bit to last week. On Thursday morning of last week, December 3rd, I sent some emails to the board along with Jeremy, just so he was in the loop as far as what information we're sharing with one another. And I basically just said I had a bunch of phone calls and emails from parents over the few days prior to that regarding our eligibility policy for middle and high school students. And I said, I'm sure that you had probably received as many of those calls. I attached the policy. And basically I just included with that particular message the fact that people, I think, were under the expectation that myself or the rest of the administration could just take and alter that particular policy because of some of the conditions that you guys have already discussed tonight. Like I told the people that had contacted me, and I told the board, because it was a board policy that was approved, after 2 readings prior to the 18-19 school year, we can't just adapt and adjust that on our own. That's something that would have to go through the board. It would have to go through that particular process. I didn't get a ton of feedback on that, which was fine. I actually kind of thought that was going to be it with it, and we would just move forward. Later that week, I got another call from a parent that was pretty adamant that this was not working correctly. And I provided you some specific information about that particular conversation and the student that affected over the weekend, or actually I think it was on Monday of the next week. And then we had some phone conversations individually at the beginning of this week. Basically, what I had been hearing from people that contacted me is the number one thing that they were struggling with was the midterm ended on a Thursday. The way that we typically do this is more times than not, the midterm ends in the middle of a week. So what we've done since I've been here for 4.5 years, just as far as grades being due and have to be posted by the teachers. At the high school end, we typically give a little bit more time. At the elementary, I think Shane has a quicker turnaround time as far as when grades are due. But at the high school, usually we wait until the following week, whatever the first school day is of that week. So in this case, it would have been Monday the 23rd. Now, obviously, before we even got to midterm, we had all sorts of problems come up that week. We had to send, numerous kids home. We ended up working remotely that week. And then ultimately, because we ended up having 9 staff members that tested positive on that end of the building, we decided we'd be better off the next week, just taking the whole week out, trying to give everybody an opportunity to recover, because we just, quite frankly, didn't have the staff to be able to continue on the next week. So much like we've done in the past, when we've had snow days or other issues that have come up where we haven't been able to have school, we bumped the due date for grades to the next school day that was in session the following week. So I know some people are looking at that from the perspective that, well, grades should have been due that day, so on and so forth. If they had been due that day, it's not necessarily a matter of I disagree with the fact that my child is on the ineligibility list. It's if grades had been due that day, I would have been able to take that week of Thanksgiving plus the next week, and based on the people that I've talked to, this week right now would not have been an issue for people. And I understand that argument. And the tough part is them asking, well, now we should be able to go back and say, well, actually, we should start the eligibility period on the 23rd instead of the 30th when grades were actually submitted. We can't do that because we can't go back and guess at what grades would have been at that point in time. Based on my conversations with teachers, there would have actually been a lot more kids on the ineligibility list had we pulled grades on the 23rd, as there were a number of them that actually did a lot of work over that Thanksgiving break and submitted things prior to grades being pulled on the 30th. So that's where we had the conversation about if we're going to do something and deviate from what's going on right here, there would have to be some type of policy suspension or policy change, because any way we slice it, we'd have to cut down the amount of time that they would be ineligible. So the policy states they're going to be out for a minimum of 2 weeks, after which we recheck grades for those kids. So if we're going to do something that shortens that, we would have to have a little bit of a policy change there. Now, I did get an email from a staff member today that was sent on your way. And rather than stealing some of those ideas, because I think we were thinking some of the same things here, I was just going to give you a couple of things to think about here from the perspective of a staff member. One thing being here from this person, I do not think eligibility should be on a case-by-case basis. This would put the emphasis on just getting the grade up rather than instruction or learning, and it would also cut corners. That isn't what education is about. It's about all the layers of learning and the responsible student practices that go along with that learning. A case-by-case basis would also present a whole host of problems whereby teachers and administrators would be accused of favoritism, etc. If we are trusted enough to teach our students and do all this, we should be trusted that the grades we submit are legitimate and valid. At this point, I think changing anything would be a slap in the face to all of our students who do and have put in the time to do what's necessary ahead of time, not just currently, but also over the years. I don't think being ineligible is ever an ability question at our school. I think it's a priority question. And I think our priority should be academics first, with activities a close second. Further, I think this type of change, if occurring now, would be reactionary and scream of preferential treatment. I don't think we could call ourselves exceptional for too long if we make a change of this nature. If it truly is a concern, it could be something discussed and amended before the start of a school year. Now, I agree with those things, and obviously I understand people's frustrations and some different things. I think we have a real integrity issue in front of us right now. I know there's a number of kids that have been very frustrated over the course of the last week and a half because they haven't been able to participate in some things. And I think that frustration is understandable. But at the end of the day, it's our job to make sure that kids are being held accountable and responsible, and, you know, essentially their choices and our choices create our reality. And for some of them, it kind of stinks. But at the end of the day, I think a valuable lesson is going to be learned. I think kind of in line with that email, if we at this point just decide that we're going to change it now, it's not fair to all the kids that have already been put in that situation where they've had to miss things, and other students would then not have to miss anything, essentially after they were in the same boat. So I think moving forward, leaving this alone would be the best option, and I think it makes the most sense. I think if we decide we're going to change it, I think it creates other issues for us moving forward. And I kind of highlighted some of those to you in some of the messages that I sent out this week, because I think it brings a lot of other policies and things that we have in place. Those are now going to become questioned because, of how this whole scenario panned out. Like I said, I understand people's frustration, but at the end of the day, I think we have a responsibility to hold kids accountable. And I realize there's a lot of moving parts that goes along with this year. I think, and Will and Shane can back me up on this one, I think our teachers have done an exceptional job of setting forth expectations for students and what they need to be doing on some of this stuff. And that doesn't discount the fact that when a kid is being asked to learn from home or chooses on their own to learn from home, which we've had a lot of that going on as well, there is a greater amount of responsibility placed on them because of the expectations that are being asked of them. So I do understand that element of it, but I think to use some of that as an excuse in this case is kind of stretching a bit. And that's just my opinion on that. So like I told you in the email I sent you last week, my recommendation is to leave it alone, to stick with the policy. I think we worked pretty hard 2.5 years ago to put something like this in place to help hold kids accountable. I think this particular policy is very lenient in comparison to what other districts do. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing for our kids, and I think we just need to leave it alone. And that's my opinion on the matter.
I'm not saying I disagree with the policy, but my issue is a little bit, if we're going to give leniency to the teachers, like I think we owe it to the kids. And like you said, it's way more difficult to learn at home. Well, essentially we've taken that opportunity away from them by closing school or sending them home. And so like, I don't think it's a terrible idea to show some leniency toward the kids. I'm not saying say Fs are acceptable and go ahead and play basketball, or go ahead and wrestle or whatever. I'm just saying, like, I think we have to give some leniency. It can't all be, we can't give it all to the teachers and then say, all right, students, your expectations are still the same. I don't think that's fair. I mean, I don't think that's,
honestly, I think allowing 1 F is too much leniency.
I can agree with that.
We're allowing an F. We're allowing 1 F. I mean,
right.
If back when I was in high school, you were allowed a 2.0, 0 Fs.
Right. I'm not saying that. I'm talking as far as for COVID this year.
But still, why would you allow a student to participate if they're failing 2 classes?
Corey, I'm not saying I want a student to participate. I'm fine if we wait till Monday to carry that. But I'm just saying, if our expectations are like, I'm not saying we have to be lenient, but like, I think we have to, I don't know. I think we have to understand a little bit that it's tough, and maybe the leniency is, yeah, you're still going to be out, but instead of it's 2 weeks, maybe we say, hey, if a teacher gets something graded and allows them to do, and maybe this doesn't start till January. I don't know. I'm just saying, if it allows a student like that has to learn for home because we're not allowed to be in school. And while it might be tougher, just like Mr. Kuntz said, maybe that's what we need to do. I don't know.
It's a proven fact that kids don't learn well not being in class. They learn way better being in person. So that's, I mean, yeah, I'm not saying change the policy, because yes, there need to be consequences for failing a class. I mean, yes, you should have a consequence because it's not right. But we're also going through a total change right now with COVID-19, that the path nobody's been down. Kids are trying to learn from home. It's very proven that it doesn't work. The grades suffer.
Probably on top of that, it's probably some of the struggle. Like when you look at the junior high basketball season, normally it's a short 6 weeks already, but I believe about 3 weeks of that got canceled or moved back. And so pretty much the girls, I think, have 3 weeks and the boys have 2 weeks. And so I guess there was like 4 junior high boys that were out, and that started their first week of games and it ends this week. So pretty much there were kids that didn't even go up because they said that they weren't even going to be eligible for games. So there's those really strange things like that happen in this year. And so that's why I'm kind of wondering, maybe if we have things that are shortened with practice, things that are shortened with school days and stuff, maybe it'd make more sense, rather than going with 2 weeks, is to go to 1 week and then have the grades checked with the kids that are failing, rather than letting their failing grades kind of play on for another week or something like that. That way you can get on top of their grades right away. So I don't know. That's just something I had thought about.
Kyle, this is Jeremy.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question of the administration?
Oh, you betcha.
I think it would be helpful for context here for the public to understand how many kids we're talking about here. What is the percentage of kids who are actually ineligible in your student body? I think that's an important number for the public to understand.
Hold on a second, Jeremy. I'm going to try to pull up my eligibility list just so I can see. So currently in 6th through 12th grade, there are 24 kids that have, so, and again, the criteria, they have at least 2 Fs, or they have 1 F and the percentage is below 50%. In most cases on the list, the majority of the students have more than 2 Fs.
What's that number normally?
Last year we did not have, I don't think we had anybody. So let's go back here a second. The first year the policy was in place, the numbers were relatively high, and they always get higher this time of year than they are to start the year. So usually end of the first quarter, first quarter midterm and end of the first quarter, you don't have near as many as you do as you get towards the midterm of the second quarter and the end of the second quarter. Things kind of die down again, usually after Christmas for a little bit there, but when you get to the end of the third quarter, they usually jump back up. But typically, this time of year is usually when we see the most kids on that list. As far as specific numbers, I don't have specific numbers in front of me. I do remember when we first put the policy into play 2.5 years ago or whatever it was. I remember this specifically because I was coaching basketball. I think this grade poll, I had 5 kids that had to sit out for the first basketball game of the year due to grades. Now, as far as what that is in the context of everything else, I don't know. But this is typically the time of year where we see the most. Now, don't get me wrong. We've had some kids earlier this year, midterm of the first quarter and after the first quarter, that were out of school because they had to quarantine or some different things and found themselves on the list. Whether that was directly related to being at home or not, I don't know for sure. It'd be impossible to know that for a fact. But
from what you remember, are the numbers now higher than they ever have been?
No, they're not higher than they ever have been. That first year was a little bit of I know the first year was kind of a mess. I shouldn't say a mess, but it was a new policy is going into play. And I think it was just a little bit of an adjustment period for that. I know last year to start the school year, we did really well, but then again, we get to this time of year and things usually, go up significantly based on that. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, and I shared this with you in one of my emails last week, is that I would say 90% of the kids that find themselves on the ineligibility list, and this is kind of what the email I read from the teacher was touching on as far as an ability level, 90% of the people that end up on there is due to the fact that they just don't do something and they don't turn it in. So lots of missing grades, which ultimately turn into poor overall grades in the class. So when you start talking about thinking 2 weeks is excessive and some of that stuff, it kind of depends on the context. If you really have a kid that's struggling and is actually turning stuff in, I think 2 weeks is pretty reasonable to get that stuff turned around in terms of the amount of work that they're going to have to do to relearn and the work that the teacher is going to have to do to reteach. I think the thing that can skew that a little bit is the fact that when you have a lot of kids that just aren't doing work and not turning things in, it's really easy to get things turned around in 1 or 2 days because it was pretty easy to get that stuff done in the first place. So it's more of a responsibility thing with a lot of these kids than it is an actual inability to learn the content. So and I do think if at some point you're thinking about adjusting to a 1 week period where they would have to be out, then I think it would be important to add more grade check periods throughout the semester as well. Instead of just pulling it midterm, quarter, and then midterm and quarter, I think it would be wise to say we're going to pull every 2 weeks then for everybody.
Just a quick follow-up, and then I'll be quiet. To my point, so 24 on the ineligible list, 6 through 12. Roughly, what is
so out of 140 kids, there's
that was
roughly 140 kids there.
Okay, out of 140. Thank you.
Kevin, how many of those are athletes, or how many of them just meet the criteria of being eligible that aren't participating?
So typically that's what we see a lot of as well, of the 24 kids that are on there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think, based on what I know and have seen, would have been out for an activity at this point in time. So 7 of the 24.
So 7 of the 24 are actually athletes that the policy affects.
Correct.
So 7 out of 140.
Sounds like the number.
Right, and I think Flyer Fridays have really helped with this, right? And so
I would make the argument that they have been helpful with that.
Yeah, and so we've essentially moved them and kind of disregarded them just throughout the year this year, right? I mean, like, essentially we've gotten rid of some or moved them to, is my understanding.
Well, the only ones we moved were the ones that came up after Thanksgiving. So actually it was Friday the 20th. So the last day that we were actually in session before we were off was a Flyer Friday.
Okay.
And then you can tell me if I'm wrong or not. Our old policy was by the semester. So you would have actually lost a whole semester if we would have had the old policy that we used to have.
Right. The old policy was just, well, technically there wasn't really an old policy. It was, we just follow the minimum requirements set forth by the Activities Association. So what the thing about that is, that was kind of a mess because, like you said, if you didn't pass enough credits for the semester, then you had to sit out the entire following semester. Now, we still have to abide by that for a kid that's going to participate in Activities Association stuff. But that was kind of the whole rationale for doing something additional to that was, let's try to hold these kids accountable. So when it does come to the end of the semester, we've done some things throughout so they don't have to miss an entire semester of whatever it happens to be. So it was kind of supplementing, which is basically what most schools do to some degree.
I try to get some insight. I called the ASBSD and talked to Jim Holbeck there. And I said, what have you seen? Because he's going around schools and stuff. And he had said that there's a lot of schools kind of in the same boat doing different things. He said some have just suspended their policy. Some have done this or that, but he really likes the idea of a 1 week where kids, you know, between the online school and having school canceled and all that, he felt 1 week was probably a way where kids can still participate, but yet they don't fall through the cracks. So that was his suggestion.
So I guess what, you know, if we were to change any policy, it's going to take a first reading of a policy and then we're going to have a second reading of a policy. So we're going to be, if we do something maybe next week and then we have to do something the next week. So we're 3 weeks out from when these kids could play. So they'll be eligible by the beginning of, by the end of next week anyway.
I would
Right.
think that we would do the new policy probably just to be the fairest, maybe start it in January when school kicks back in. I don't know. That's just me thinking.
So you are correct. If you choose to, you know, amend, revise, you know, whatever the case is there, you need to have 2 readings to do that. Yeah, I just think we need to be a little bit careful if we think that we're going to revise the policy. Like I said before, I think I think things are pretty lenient the way that they are already. I think if you're going to switch to a 1 week period, I think it would be wise to say that we're going to check grades more frequently then. Just for the sake of the kids. And, you know, it seems like in my mind, going a 4.5 week interval for grades and then just having a 1 week period is really kind of watering things down a little bit there. So if you want to wait until midterm to check the first time, that's fine. But then I think you should check again in 2 weeks and check again at quarter and so on and so forth. So essentially add at least one more grade check date in there somewhere along the way.
I don't know if this is a dumb question. To be honest, I actually assumed that we were doing a 2 week check that happened every 2 weeks anyway.
Maybe you want to break that down, Kevin, because when you read through this, it is a little confusing. Can you maybe go through the calendar of how it falls?
Sure. Hang on a second. So, and I'll try to find it and pull it up here. But essentially what we have going on is so basically everybody is fine until midterm. We don't do any grade check until midterm of the quarter. The reason for that is I think if you do a grade check any sooner than that, you run the risk of evaluating eligibility based on a really small sample size of grades that are in the grade book. That's why typically I think it works better to wait until the 4.5 week period. And then if you were to add another one after that, but essentially, let me see here. So I'm going to share. All right, so this is the actual policy that was passed. So eligibility is going to be determined at 4.5 week intervals, so midterm and quarter grades, which part of the reason we did that was to not create more work for the teacher. Those were 2 dates or times during the semester where they were already going to have to post grades. So at the end of let's see here. So a student's eligibility status will be in effect for the duration of no less than 2 weeks. So if the student does not gain back their eligibility at the end of the 2 weeks, they're ineligible until the next 4.5 week interval. So basically we check at midterm. After midterm, there's a 2 week ineligibility period. After that 2 weeks is up, we recheck grades for only the students that were on the ineligibility list. If they get their grades up at that point in time, and we only look at the grades that were actually on the list, that they were on the list for. We don't go look all at their grades, just the ones that they were on the list for. If they have those grades fixed, then they're able to start participating immediately. If they have not fixed that at that point in time, they're ineligible until we would check grades again, which would be at the end of the quarter. At the end of the quarter, we do the same thing. If you haven't met the criteria, you're on the ineligibility list for 2 weeks. Essentially, we then just repeat the process. So it's not, like I said, too terribly stringent in terms of what we're actually trying to do there. And then we just have some different criteria down here as far as expectations for them if they are actually ineligible. So if you were going to change this from a 2 week ineligibility period to a 1 week period, I still wouldn't check grades any earlier than midterm. And I would maybe potentially just add another grade check basically 2 weeks after midterm or somewhere in there, about halfway between midterm and quarter, if you're going to do a 1 week ineligibility period.
So we essentially only check it 3 times. Is that correct?
4 times.
Well, the end of the year, does that carry over or do we start over fresh every year?
So do you mean like at the very, very end of the school year.
Yeah. Isn't that number 4? Wouldn't that be number 4 technically? Am I understanding that right?
Well, so we check it 4 times first semester, and then we would check it, well, right, 4 times second semester, but that last one, that second quarter grade, we don't carry that over into the.
Right. We check it for them though, but I mean, don't we check it at 4.5 weeks? Essentially, if everybody in our school had passing grades, we'd check it at 4.5 weeks.
Right. Those are what the grading windows are in our online grade book. I mean, we post grades at midterm, and then we post grades again at quarter. Now the grades that are posted at the quarters, so after the first 9 weeks and after the second 9 weeks, are what factor into their overall semester grade, which is what goes on the transcript.
Right. Okay, I think I understand that now. Okay. I think.
And the midterm grade post is actually kind of more of a courtesy when you think about it, because it doesn't really serve much of a purpose other than we post that grade so people have an opportunity to know where they are at that point in time, halfway through the quarter. And a lot of time midterm coincides with the midterm of the first quarter, and the midterm of the third quarter coincide with teacher conferences.
Okay.
So if we can't technically pass anything now, is it pretty much best just to kick it around with people and hear what people's thoughts are, and then when we meet on Wednesday to finish this discussion, or what do you suggest?
Well, I mean, you could certainly add a first reading of an amendment or a revision on Wednesday. And then I suppose technically, unless you would want to have a policy that says you're going to check grades prior to midterm, you could probably wait to have the second reading until January, because we would only be like a week and a half into the semester, or 2 weeks into the semester, not even, I think a week in, at the January meeting. And I don't know that anything we would pass would check grades that early on that way. The only issue you're going to run into would be at the end of the quarter here, we're going to check grades again, and the eligibility that would happen or not happen after that period would still be subject to that 2-week period. So
Yeah, I don't know how to make it fair to everybody. I mean, it's been strange because the weather was so nice and everyone was doing so well in the beginning, and then all of a sudden it seemed like when it got colder, COVID hit. So I don't know how you go back in time and be fair. So I don't know if a person can change it yet here at December, or if it's just best to start a new semester in January with that. If we do some changes, but I'm probably thinking maybe the January makes more sense.
I guess I'm leaning a little more towards Corey's line of thinking on it. I think our policy is already pretty low barred as far as what the grades need to be eligible. I mean, when I was in high school, you had to have at least a B in every class to be able to play sports. So to be able to be getting an F in one class and only having to pass the rest of yours, it's a really low bar. I really don't think any changes need to be made. I think that is a reasonable grade acceptance level for them to be able to play sports as it is. And for us to lower the bar even more based on the circumstances, yeah, the circumstances stink, but the circumstances stink across the board for every student. And yeah, you might have to be a little more prudent in how much you're keeping up in your schoolwork, but that's just kind of the place we're in right now. So I guess I would probably lean towards just leaving the policy the way it is right now.
Okay. I mean, I'm not opposed to leaving the policy. I just think with everything going on and the transition from in class to out of class, like I'm not opposed to looking at something to potentially maybe make it lenient for a year or however long this whole COVID thing goes on. Beyond that, then I agree. I don't think the policy is all that terribly tough, but I do think that we're making changes as far as COVID goes and lenient also. So I just think that maybe that's where a little leniency shown to the kids. I don't know, especially if we're losing or moving or losing some of our Flyer Fridays, which I'm guessing is probably what helps get those numbers low. I'm guessing 24 is probably way higher than what it was last year at this high point. And I think we could probably attribute most of that to COVID.
And those are total ineligible kids. Those aren't total ineligible athletes.
Right. But if they wanted to play sports, they couldn't. So, I mean,
they can't even participate in choir or chorus or anything else.
Right. Or extracurriculars. So yeah, you're counting sports. I mean, if we were having band and music things, that number might be 7, it might be 24.
And, playing extracurricular activities is just that. It's an extracurricular activity. We send our kids to school to be good grades and become good members of society. The extracurriculars are to enhance the fun of being in school. It's not that we go to school to play sports. We go to school to learn first. And
I agree with that, but I would say the key words is in school. And that's where I
disagree with that. I really think that if they keep up on their stuff and they do their stuff daily and they do everything right, I really don't think that that's a big issue. If you look at the total athletes that we have out for sports and we have 7 total out of there, that is not a real big number. And if you go back probably last year, we'd probably have the same amount. Kevin would have to check into that. I don't know for sure.
If you're talking just athletes, and I'm not trying to turn this into an athlete thing. We have 8 girls out for basketball, 7 boys out for basketball, varsity levels, and then another 10 maybe. I mean, so it's actually probably a percentage wise of the kids that are out for sports is probably a way bigger number than that. Right? Aren't our numbers that low?
Yep. It's on the girl side.
Am I wrong?
I do not know that.
Sorry, I was pulling midterm grade check from last year. So 7-12 last year, we had 22 kids that were ineligible at this time.
Okay.
So, and that doesn't include 6th grade because 6th grade wasn't on our end of the building. So as far as basketball numbers, I know the girls high school wise are 8. Will, I think boys basketball, you have 11 high school kids?
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, the participation numbers for those are not fantastic.
Well,
Will, how many do you have out that are not playing because of grades?
Say it again.
How many do you have that are not playing because of grades this past 2 weeks?
2.
2? Okay.
Okay. Well, so it sounds like we'll talk about this at the next meeting and may or may not come up with the first reading.
Yeah. I think we're all kind of on the same page that we want what's best for the kids and how we get there. If it's 2 weeks or 1 week, how we come on that, or maybe there's another approach, but I think we're on the same page. It's just, for me, I think it seems like 2 weeks can almost be discouraging, that they can just keep pushing it off, or they could even fall through the cracks. But maybe 2 weeks is correct. I don't know, but I think it's good to probably hear for some people and maybe talk about it again. But I'm glad we were able to meet.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, Mark. For me, I think the sports thing is kind of a carrot on a stick. You you get good grades, you get to do sports as a reward kind of deal. So yeah, we got to have a balance as far as the work versus reward. And yeah, whether or not that's 1 week or 2 week, that could be talked about and discussed. But you know, for the most part, I still think we need to stick with our guns on what we have right now.
Agreed. Okay. Anybody else have anything else on that? Then I think all we need is a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second, Slade.
Second by Slade. All those in favor, say aye.
All right.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Have a great night, everyone.
You too.
Thanks.